Good.
Good to see everybody. Welcome back.
Yeah.
From those traveling from far away, and also those who we haven't been together for a few weeks already. But this
You
is
have new growth, I see.
What's that?
You have new growth.
Oh, does it look new? I trimmed it.
Well, it looks longer than it did. Let me put it that.
You should have seen me a week ago, even.
Oh,
a fuller chin, as it were.
Hmm.
I'm going to share my screen. Oops. You may hear a little bit of toddler music in the background. Let me know if it's too loud, but hopefully it's not too distracting. This is our last learning together in our winter education series, and I guess it's fitting because it's almost spring. Gratitude, praise, delight, and more Jewish rituals to frame the day. So today we're going to be looking at laying down at night. And this is our third in our series, and we use this series really to frame the day, to think about rituals that can be used from morning and now until night. And we looked at traditional sources, but also contemporary ones. So we looked at both how, let's say, the rabbis and many people in our past have framed their day ritualistically, and then also looked at poetic interpretations and expressions of those for folks who want to be inspired also to find their own voice and maybe some of their own creative expression in Jewish ritual. So our purpose throughout this whole series has been to explore Jewish ritual, to think about contemporary artistic and reconstructionist approaches, and then pardon about the crying right now, and then reflect on value and their integration in our lives today. So the format that we've been doing and will continue to do for today is we're going to read sources. We're going to read primary sources, the classics, and then also contemporary ones as well. And I thought we could just start off by just thinking about our own lives for a second and opening up to the group. Who has a bedtime ritual? And for those who do have one, what makes them a unique part of your day, a unique part of your evening, and why particularly the evening, or why particularly bedtime? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm just going to open up the floor for anybody who wants to share. Feel free just to unmute, and we'll take a little bit of time just to hear each other's experiences with that. So who has a bedtime ritual, and what makes it an important part of your day or your evening?
Hello. Say something. I not to sound morose, but I've been trying to prepare my son, who was going to have to be the executor of my will, and so he won't be overwhelmed with what needs to be done. And since I started to do that, I reverted back to saying prayer, good night, the now I lay me down to sleep prayer, so I could bless everybody and go to sleep. So I guess that's been going on for about the last year or so. And it's very nice.
What do you think inspired that transition for you?
I think thinking about my family more intensely than, I want to say thoughtlessly. I don't mean that. I mean, just not thinking about them versus thinking about them. And so that's what did it for me.
Sort of like before bed, there is an opportunity to sort and prioritize your priorities internally, and that felt fitting.
Yes.
Is that a fair thing to say? Yeah. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Does anybody else have a bedtime ritual?
Yes, I do. And it's kind of from the sublime to the ridiculous. And this one is new. I just started playing a little lullaby for myself, and it's Hashkivenu. And it's a cantor singing, Ozzy Cohn singing. He's got a gorgeous voice. And as soon as I heard it, I knew that had to be in my life. And this is pretty new. It's only been maybe a month or so. So I'll play it sometimes a few times, and it's so relaxing. That's the sublime part. The ridiculous part is I have the TV on all night, and I play reruns of Are You Being Served, which is a British comedy from the 70s. And it's just relaxing. It's just like having old friends there. and I fall asleep to it. I don't have to stay awake. I know all the storylines, and it just lulls me off to sleep.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's something light. End the day on a lighter note. And also I did, if we have some time at the end, I'll share. I was looking around for a Hashkivenu recording online, so I found one too. I'll share at the end, and you'll let me know how it sounds next to the one that you're accustomed to listening to. Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, I actually don't do this one at night, but it's the nighttime prayer, the angel prayer. I use that prayer like a lot, like even when I'm driving or when I feel not in danger, but if I don't know, if I feel like I need protection, wherever, I use that prayer a lot. But it's just a great idea. I don't know why I don't say it at night, because I think you're supposed to. And it would be nice to say at night. I just find that prayer so comforting.
Good. That's helpful to hear, to help feel comfort and safety. And maybe that's a really fitting thing when you're gonna go to sleep and you're curling up in your bed and it's dark outside. That all makes a lot of sense to me. Good. Does anybody? Oh yeah, please, Robbie.
Since I'm getting older, I think more and more in my Dutch language, which is my primary language. And of course, I was raised as a Christian, because of losing my whole family during the Shoah. But all these little songs that I was raised with, my Dutch little going to bed songs, always come through my mind, and I still know them so well. They're so much more comforting than the Hebrew American ones, although I try, after so many years in this country, I should be more comfortable with it, but I am. But it's the old songs that come back, and I can sing them for you. They're quite cute.
That sounds really cute. And what does it do for you?
What's that?
What does it do for you when they come to you or when you sing them before bed?
Well, it's again comfort, I think. My little childhood was pretty comfortable. It became more hairy when I was a teenager and realized what had happened in my beginning life. But the songs, I've always loved songs anyhow. I like to sing. And so that was part of my life, and it still comes easily back.
Very nice.
So
Good, thank you.
Ik ga slapen, ik ben moe, ik sluit mijn beide oogjes toe. Heere, houd ook deze nacht over mij getrouwde wacht. Boze dat ik heb gedaan, zie het Heere toch niet aan. Schoon mijn zonden miljoen zijn, maak om Jezus wil mij rein. You got that, right?
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We can probably have time for one more. Does anybody else want to share? All right, so let's look at the sources about a bedtime ritual. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And we're going to start off by looking at we're going to be spending our time thinking about, and I think several of you were alluding to it and saying that this was a part of your ritual already, either saying it or thinking about it or listening to musical renditions of it. But there is a practice in Jewish tradition to say the Shema before bed. And the Shema, when people say the Shema before bed, there's actually the Shema, and then there's also these texts, these liturgical pieces that precede it and follow it, that as a whole are referred to as the bedtime Shema. So we're going to be looking at first a discussion from the Talmud as to why people say Shema before bed. We'll be looking at chunks of the bedtime Shema itself to think about what it's saying and what it might do for us, and then looking at some contemporary poetic reflections on it. And if we have some time at the end, I'll play a musical rendition of it that may sound familiar as well. So I start. This is from the Talmud, from Masechet Brachot, a tractate that's largely dedicated to blessings and prayers of different kinds, although it includes a lot of discussion about other things as well. And so I took snippets out of it and I highlighted 3 reasons, although there are more given, as to why people say the Shema at bedtime. Does anybody mind reading this, starting with Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi? And feel free to unmute and read if anybody wants to volunteer.
Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, even though one recited Shema in the synagogue, it is a mitzvah to recite it upon his bed. If one is a Torah scholar, he need not recite Shema. Abai said, even a Torah scholar must recite at least one verse of prayer. Rabbi Yitzhak said, anyone who recites Shema on his bed is as if he holds a double-edged sword guarding him from all evil, as it is stated, high praises of God in their mouths and a double-edged sword in their hands.
Beautiful, thank you. So let's take it one at a time. Three different opinions here as to why reflections on the Shema. This first one, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, even though one recited the Shema in the synagogue, it is a mitzvah to recite it upon their bed. Doesn't tell us why, but I'm curious if folks have an inclination or a sense of why that may be.
I would guess that it's in case you don't wake up, it's the last thing you will have said in your life.
Okay, good, that's good. And why, and what's the thinking behind that? Why is the Shema something that is discussed as what one could do or should do before bed or before passing?
I think this is that. I think perhaps because of the words of the Haftarah, when you lie down and when you rise up.
Okay, good, yes. There's a discussion that frames that the Shema should be said in morning and night. And the language of the Shema implies, when you're rising and when you're laying down, like you're saying. So there's a discussion. Well, when you say it at nighttime, does that mean if I went to synagogue at night and I said it, does that count? But here there's a more literal reading, like what I think you're implying, that it's also when you're laying down. That means when you're going to bed. It's not when you're in synagogue, it's when you're at bed. So I think that's also a good reading of that. Any other thoughts on this one? So someone said, we read it at bedtime in case that's the last thing that we say, because that's a Shema is the right, a core theological declaration. God is our God. And then also because there's a mitzvah to say it at nighttime when you're laying down. So you should say it at bedtime. Anything else anybody wants to add on this one?
It could be that we acknowledge this, that God is everywhere, not just in the synagogue. So he or she hears us everywhere we are.
Good. So there's a sense of wanting to make that declaration, even in, let's say, the privacy of your own home and in the privacy of your own bed. Okay, good. I like that. So let's go to this one. If one is a Torah scholar, they don't need to recite the Shema. But then there's a different opinion that's shared from Abaye, who says even a Torah scholar should recite something before bed. What is this debate about? And what is this concluding idea from Abaye echoing? What idea is that perhaps reflecting?
I think a Torah scholar is no more important than us regular people.
Mm-hmm.
I do not want to make a distinction when it relates to God and religious life. It just is more learned about a number of things, right?
Good. So this is a universal thing. This is a universal principle. Perhaps. Oh yes, sorry, good.
I also think that when you're studying Torah, it's sort of an intellectual, cognitive kind of thing. But when you're saying the Shema by yourself, it's personal. And I think that it implies that we need to be in touch with it personally, not just on an intellectual level.
Very nice. This is not just an intellectual project. This is something that we're trying to internally maybe muster, an experience we're trying to create, or as also shared, this is something that's for everybody. Right? Saying this before bed is for everybody.
Russ, this is Ed.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, where it says the scholar doesn't have to recite the Shema. And that's not attributed, that quote is not attributed. There's no rabbinic citation there. It's just like a statement that's hanging, and everything else has a citation.
Yes. So interestingly, so I think there's two thoughts on that I have. One is that I made a mistake in my English, and there is in this one actually a citation. It says Amar Rav Nachman. This is actually attributed to Rav Nachman. It says if he's a Talmud scholar, he need not recite Shema. So I apologize for that. I can even include that here. Or Rabbi Nachman says. But you are also right to point out that actually a lot of times in the Talmud there are no citations. But sorry for confusing on that. But yeah, this one does have a citation that I did not include. Apologies for that. Does that change your reading of it, Ed?
No, but thanks for the clarification, Ross. I get very confused anytime somebody's teaching me Talmud.
Oh, it's very confusing. I often get confused when someone's teaching me Talmud. Very fair. Okay, good. And I think perhaps some, the opinion that was shared earlier that it's good to have this as the last thing that somebody thinks before bed, a declaration about God. Maybe Rabbi Nachman is also saying, well, a Torah scholar has Torah on their mind all the time, so they don't need to say it. But maybe the opinion is, no, you still need to say this in particular. It's not just any Torah we're talking about. Maybe we're talking about the Shema here. Okay, let's keep going. This last one, I think this one is interesting and slightly different pace. Rabbi Yitzchak said, anyone who recites Shema on their bed, it is as if they're holding a double-edged sword, guarding him from all evil. And then he quotes the Psalms. Anyone who recites the Shema on his bed, it is as if he holds a double-edged sword, guarding him from evil. What do people think about what that is saying?
This reminds me of like how I use the angel prayer, like for protection, because at night you're kind of vulnerable. It's dark, you're alone, you're in bed, you're undressed. And, your mind goes somewhere else. So it's like having your own weapon with you. I kind of like that.
Yeah. And maybe from your experience when reciting that blessing or that prayer, does it make you feel more safe?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Why do you think that happens for you or for others who've experienced that?
I think like the more you do it, your sort of brain gets it's like, oh, I this is when I can like exhale, I'm allowed to exhale now because I'm protected anyway. And like when I'm driving, I'm worried about hitting animals too, not just my own safety, but I say it for the animals too. And it just makes me relax more.
Yeah. I wonder if some of it's acknowledging things that are more, maybe in some ways they feel more powerful than you or than us, and an understanding or a belief that that force has us in mind, and that's protective. That's a protective feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What else do people think about this?
This Enid, when I think of the Shema and you think of the words, it really gives you a more worldly feeling that that there's a whole world out there, and maybe in some way you're not just saying this for yourself, but you're saying it for every living thing, whatever combination that may be.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and maybe that's also kind of what you're implying too about when you're driving and thinking about animals. And what would you say in it is how does that relate to a feeling of, let's say, safety or feeling guarded?
Well, I don't know if it's that, or it's rather when I have a more inclusive worldly thought. There's a certain peacefulness there, despite all of the world that there's everything far from peace. But that's just what it does for me.
Yeah, that's nice. I wonder if some of that is feeling like the world is actually so much grander than me, the little old I, and
I-
that's humbling and comforting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is. It puts things into perspective.
I was
Um,
thinking, it's Maria. I was thinking, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, the word double-edged sword caught my eye. Why a double-edged sword? Because a double-edged sword can also harm us. So maybe the Shema is protect from evil from outside, but also to protect us from ourselves at night when we go to bed, from having thoughts that keep us from resting, that, I don't want to say harmful, but that are not mentally healthy, or to protect us. But that double sword, maybe it's because I have a lot of military history in the family, but that double-edged sword, that just kind of like, why that? So
Yeah, I like that. That's a really interesting reading. Yeah, where it says guarding from all evil. And well, where does evil come from? Where do the bad forces come from? Sometimes they come from outside, sometimes they come from our own heads. And I like that. Yeah, and I think the way I read double edge is that it's extra protective. It's sharp on both sides, ready to slice in any direction. Good. I think that's actually a really nice transition point to start looking at what the larger liturgical unit of the bedtime Shema is. And one of the things, different traditions have slightly different variations of what the bedtime Shema looks like. But I put in here one that's widely used in the world of Ashkenazim, although there are other variations, and I thought we could look at this. This is just the introduction to it. Does anybody mind reading Master of the Universe until Redeemer down here?
That's all right. Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who has angered me or sinned against me, either physically or financially, against my honor or anything that is mine, whether accidentally or intentionally, inadvertently or deliberately, by speech or by deed, by thought or by speculation, in this incarnation or in any other. Any Israelite is forgiven. May no one be punished on my account. May it be your will, Adonai, my God and God of my fathers, that I shall sin no more, nor repeat my sins. Neither shall I again anger you, nor do what is wrong in your eyes. The sins I have committed, erase in your abounding mercies, but not through suffering or severe illness. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be acceptable before you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer.
Thank you. I wonder the double-edged sword comment about slicing away forces inside of us as well that may be unhelpful or destructive. I wonder if you notice a thread in this introduction to that point.
Here you're asking for others to, or for myself to forgive anyone who has done all of these things. That said, what about forgiving ourselves for the same reasons? So there are two sides to that sword, if you want to put it that way. And I guess it sort of says that at the same time, as I keep reading, that you want forgiveness, or you're asking to do that. But then it says, but you don't want to suffer and you don't want severe illness. If I'm, in other words, erase all of the other things, but it could be maybe through suffering or severe illness for myself, or maybe for others as well. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to reread that a little bit.
Yeah, this line here, I think is this the one you're thinking of? The sins I've committed, erase in your abounding mercies, but not through suffering or
through illness.
Yeah.
So you're not willing to go that far.
Yeah, I want that to happen. Forgive me so I don't have to go through all that, please.
Yeah, that's sort of, answer a question for me, Ross. We're asking all of this forgiveness or whatever we're saying. There's a lot of, forgive me for this, a lot of God in all of this. Is there another way of translating that?
Yes. And we'll see some of the poetic, the contemporary poetic voices that are also looking for other language for that, for those that don't feel so comfortable with it. The traditional translation here, Ribono Shel Olam. I've heard Ribono Shel Olam, right? Master of the universe. And for those who are looking for other language, right? Maybe creator or spirit of the world, or the divine in this world, or some might just want to say, help me forgive, help myself forgive. And I think people are going to have to figure out where they feel their greatest comfort. But there's no one right answer for that one. I think that's people would feel out
But
there.
when you're saying the Shema,
Yeah,
I mean, you're using the word God.
mm-hmm.
I guess one can substitute whatever one wants in saying that, which I have to think a little bit more about. But
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll look at the Shema in a bit too, and maybe we can think about that together. Okay, sorry, I saw there's a message here. Yeah, we'll get to the Shema too, and maybe we can do some thinking together about what that might look like. And then also maybe it's also just an interesting conversation with Rabbi Julie later. Like, I'm curious also what does Lev Hayir do when doing the Shema and translating the Shema at synagogue. Yeah, Karen, did you want to comment on that or something else?
Yeah, in answer to your question, I think she uses different terms sometimes, like gender, different gender. But anyway, I had a comment about the forgiveness part of this.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know, I just find it like, I don't know what the word is, but like, it's like sometimes if somebody does something really bad, it takes more than the day of to forgive them, for me anyway. So to forgive everybody for everything every night, I don't know if my heart would be in that, because for me, forgiveness is like a process, a process. And sometimes it's a really long process.
Yeah.
Not that I hold a grudge or anything.
And it's okay if you hold a grudge. I think many of us do in different ways. But I think it is interesting, right? That's such a central focus of this is forgiving before bed. And maybe what happens in us, in you, we all have different experience of this. If we don't forgive and then we go to sleep mad or frustrated. And let's say over long periods of time, there is still anger. I never end up forgiving that person. I still feel that anger. And it's been months now or years now. So I think it's an interesting intention, right? I want to forgive before sleeping. And that doesn't necessarily mean that this is a prayer or blessing that people want to say every night. I think maybe part of what this learning is to kind of explore, if I incorporate something like this in my life, how often? And what is it that I want to say, kind of to Enid's point, like, is this the language that I feel most comfortable with, or I want to find something else, or just part of the Kriyat Shema, part of the reading of the Shema more resonant with me? So I think it's kind of an ongoing point of reflection. Yeah, I'm thinking about like the double-edged sword reflection about, what is this force inside of us that we are hoping to release or protect ourselves from. I wonder if some of that is related to this lack of forgiveness, feeling angry or feel victim, feel as though someone hurt us. It's generous. This is a very generous thing to say. I forgive you. Help me forgive. And then also forgive me. Right? The second paragraph is more like, forgive me for my mistakes as well. Maybe tomorrow morning, let's have a blank slate. Let's start afresh. Rather than carrying on the errors that I experienced or witnessed or performed myself from the day before.
Ross, I think
Yeah.
Also it's like a laying off of all these things that are weighing on me. And so forgiving everybody, including myself. So now I can peacefully go to sleep and don't have to carry that around.
Yeah, that's a great point. You probably have better dreams that way. Right? More relaxing dreams. And then you don't have to wake up as much, perhaps, or maybe you still do, but the moments of sleeping feel lighter or deeper. Actually, you have deeper sleep. Let's go down a little more. And this is actually connected to dreams. This next section here. Does anybody mind reading this for us?
Sure. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, who causes the fetters of sleep to fall upon my eyes and slumber upon my eyelids. May it be your will, Adonai, my God, and God to my fathers, to make me lie down in peace and to raise me again to peace. Let my thoughts not terrify me, nor evil dreams or evil fantasies disturb me. And may my bed be perfect before you. And light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. For you illuminate the pupil of the eye. Blessed are you, Adonai, who illuminates the whole world with his glory.
Thank you. Yeah, so interestingly, this unit is highlighting dreams in particular. Help me sleep well. Let me just have a good night's sleep, please. Help me lay down in peace. Help me raise up again in peace. Let me end my day well, and let me start my day tomorrow well.
So is this to be said before the Shema?
Yes, these are kind of the introductory verses before the reading of the Shema itself.
Oh. And then the Shema would be the whole Shema with the V'ahavta, or just the introductory line?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Mhm.
When I've mostly seen it, I've seen it. Well, I would say on one hand, when approaching this, I would say do the pieces that feel most resonant and feasible. Sometimes I think the liturgical units that we try to take on and read or put into our daily rhythm are so great that it makes the whole project a bit much. So I would say if just the single Shema feels good, I would do that. But I think oftentimes the first paragraph of the Via Hafta is often included. Sometimes there's more paragraphs included depending on, I guess, people's practice. But yeah, usually, from my understanding, it's the Shema and then the Via Hafta together. That's the textual unit.
Would you be able to put these in an email? Because I
Sure.
think that there are things that an email is easier for me to copy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
There's a lot here that needs to be thought about and digested.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I will. I'll share it with, I guess, Diane and Bobby afterward, and they can share it. So let's. We probably. I mean, we have all probably have some familiarity with the Shema, but let's just look at it together. Maybe we can think about Enid's question too. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Yeah. The big declaration, as it were. Maybe to Enid's point earlier, does anybody have language that they, for those maybe who are less comfortable with the traditional language, if there's other language that you use or you've seen that you think might resonate with some folks in the group? And if not,
Everything is
oh yes,
connected.
go ahead, sorry.
Just everything is connected, kind of a non-theological point of view.
Yeah, that the oneness here you're talking about is like all of reality. The world is one. We're all one. It's nice. I may also just assign this, if you're comfortable with it, as a homework assignment with Rabbi Julie. What are the other theological conversations that exist within the Shema? But it's a really good question and really important. But I'll also send this too for folks who want to keep thinking about it.
It also reminds me of the first commandment in a way.
Can you say more about that?
Well, the first, there is no other God, if I recall correctly. There is no other God besides me. Is that what it is? And here it's the same. Here, you know, that Adonai is our God, and Adonai is one. So there is no one else. It's basically, and that's what the first command or the commandment says as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a hearkening back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So there's a tradition too, of folks may be familiar with this, after saying the Shema, that that folks often say silently, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Lilam Vayed. Blessed is God's name, whose glorious kingdom is forever.
Okay, why is that? It always used to be when I was growing up, we said it aloud. Why is it now said silently?
Aloud, like everyone said it together in the congregation?
That's right.
That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know what would elicit the change. I have to think about it. But it's still, it's not said, I guess I would say it's not said in total silence. It's not said in perfect silence. It's still said aloud, audibly, but it's not just like declared as maybe we declare the Shema.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was the same after you said the Shema, you said the Baruch Shem Kavod.
Yeah.
Malchuto Lilam Vayed, where you repeated it after the cantor, but it was, you could hear everybody saying it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about it.
And that was in a conservative synagogue, so.
Cool, that's good. That's cool to learn that. Should we go down to the Via Hafta? Right, we're looking in some ways the core. These are core Jewish texts. Anybody want to read this one?
And you shall love Adonai our God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your possessions. And these words which I command you today shall be upon your heart. And you shall teach them sharply. These words are different. Usually it was diligently to your children, and you shall discuss them when you sit in your house and when you travel on the road and when you lie down and when you rise up, used to be. And you shall bind them for a sign, frontlets, upon your hand, and they shall be for, I'm having a hard time reading this, totophos,
Yeah.
between your eyes, and you shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gateways. On your gateway, I think that's all. Yeah.
Good. Okay, thanks. And this is hearkening back to Ed's point, right? He's saying, well, why was the Talmud saying that we should say this right at bedtime? Well, because if you look at it, the text says when you lie down. So of course you say when you lay down, not just when you're at synagogue at nighttime.
Whose translation is this? Because it's not in some parts the traditional translation that I recall.
Yeah, I have to check whose translation this was. I pulled it off a source online, but most of the changes, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, are probably like smaller ones. I heard you said when you rise, you're accustomed to saying when you rise up.
Well, I know you don't end a sentence with the preposition, but that's okay.
That's what you're
And
more accustomed to, yeah.
Yeah, but there was the word diligently, and you shall teach them diligently to your children. And there's nothing about you shall discuss when you sit in your house. I forget what the other original wording is, because I don't have it in front of me, but that wasn't the way it was written.
Mm.
And when you travel on the road, definitely was not part of it. And you shall bind them for, it was frontlets before your eyes, and it shall be, what does totophus mean?
Yeah, I'm looking at that word right now.
I mean, it used to be for frontlets between your eyes, as I recall.
What's the word you said? The frontless?
Frontlets.
Frontless.
And then I can't even tell you exactly what that means. But
I'd have to double check it. I think it means signs.
means what?
Ukshar tamli od al yadecha, and you shall bind the sign upon your hands. V'hayu letotafot beinenecha, and you shall put, and it shall be this between your eyes. I guess the translator didn't feel comfortable translating the word totafot. But I can look at it and see if there's like a more nuanced reading of it. I was thinking it kind of means also as a sign, as a symbol of some kind, as a reminder, even between your eyes. And you're pointing out.
And it used to say just upon your gates, didn't say gateways.
The one that jumped out for me is earlier on, with all your possessions, and I think I was accustomed to saying with all your might.
Exactly. Yeah, I've forgotten that one. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
But it's not just a matter of the words being different, but a whole different intent.
Right. A lot of so that one is, or the line is v'ahavta, and you shall love et Adonai Elohecha, the Lord your God, b'chol lavavcha, with all your heart, v'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, v'chol me'odecha. And it literally means might, and a lot of the early rabbis read that as your material, right? Because we're already serving with all of our heart and all of our spirit. So what is might here? It's referring to our money, our resources, that we should be putting that to God's worship as well. But I think it's because it's a piece of our liturgy, there is room to see and read it in different ways. And this, I think this translation is probably hearkening back to those early rabbinic readings, and why they chose to do that.
But could I just tell you what I found when I looked up totafot?
Oh yeah, please. That's great.
There's a bunch of stuff, but one of them simply, and I like this one, totafot is Hebrew tefillin in Aramaic.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so simple as that, maybe.
that's simple.
Translation.
That keeps it simple for us.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard this, but somewhere along the years, I heard that one of the reasons for like the mezuzah on the door, which reminds us, isn't the Shema in the mezuzah, right?
Yes.
Is like a cue or a reminder, every time you walk in and out is the cue to say the prayer or say the abbreviation of the prayer. So you're sort of almost constantly doing it. Is that right?
But the mezuzah is a reminder of the meaning of it for you as you enter and walk out of gateways or gates.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think some people might say it's as simple as well, no, I think what you're getting at is the heart of it, is that these things are surrounding you and your transition points. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to say the Shema every time you walk by, but that there's a force of reminder for you that's ever present around. And I think that this is what this is saying. And you shall write them upon your doorposts of your house and upon your gateways. And we will ask, why? Why do we do that? It's because, well, it's a reminder, it's a symbol, and it surrounds us in our comings and our goings.
And back to totafus.
Yeah.
It says, listening to what, if indeed totafus means tefillin, you bind them on your hand, and you also put one box on your forehead between your eyes.
Yep, that is certainly how the rabbis have interpreted the word. Yeah, that this is, when you're binding it on your hand and your eyes, this is referring to tefillin. That's right.
This is Ed. Along with what Edith's saying about these prescriptions, the words teach them to your children, Vishinantam, I think that doesn't that connote just like lots of repetition? Repeat them to your children.
Yeah, that's right. I think that word is its root both speaks to repetition and also to teaching. And back in the day, we often thought about education as, finding a way to keep it in your head. So repetition was a big part of that. Yeah. Yeah, and there's some whenever a translator comes to translate a text, especially that's very ancient, they have some, they're making some choices about how they're doing it. Maybe, and then you should, repeat it in your children's hearts. Probably doesn't echo, the deeper meaning of it, which is instilling it in them and teaching them.
Well, when you say teach them to your children, you're also in a way saying Lador Vador, from generation to generation. If you teach them to your children, then maybe they'll teach them to their children, etc.
Yeah, that's right. So as a bedtime practice, what is this adding? Let's say put this translation aside with some of its oddities. I didn't realize how many oddities were in here, but yeah, it's something that people say before bed. What is this adding to that, say, nighttime experience?
Well, it adds a lot of details in terms of what the Shema means. I mean, if it's not just the words of that one line, the second line, but these are actually the specifics of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. It reflects the specifics about how we should be thinking about God, or whatever language feels most comfortable for us, and how it's also not just in this moment, that it's spread throughout our day and our life and our world and our generations.
Right.
Good. Anything else here? Okay, well, let's go. There's one more little piece I want to look at of the traditional liturgy, and then we can transition to some contemporary commentary. Hashkivenu, and this is usually what happens before Hashkivenu is that there's psalms. A lot of the traditional liturgy includes the recitation of psalms, usually following this paragraph that we looked at, the V'ahavta, and then Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu, I think it actually, for whatever reason, and we can hypothesize together, has gotten a lot of attention from the musical and poetic and it's a new ritual energy. So that the bedtime Shema, this part of the bedtime Shema has gotten a lot of attention. So Hashkivenu. Does anybody mind reading this for us?
Adonai, our God, make us lie down in peace, our King. Raise us again to life. Spread over us the shelter of your peace and direct us to better ourselves through your good counsel and deliver us for your name's sake. Shield us and remove from us enemies, pestilence, sword, famine, and sorrow. Remove the adversary from before us and from behind us, and shelter us in the shadow of your wings. For you are the Almighty, who is our protector and rescuer. For you are the Almighty, who is King, gracious and merciful. Guard our going out and our coming in for life and peace from now forever.
Thank you. This might be playing off of the double-edged sword here. Remove the adversary from before us and from behind us. In some ways, this seems to me as a nice summary. Right, this is like a nice conclusive paragraph that gets to the heart of a lot of what we looked at. It doesn't cover everything, but it's a nice reframing of the larger messages.
I like the first line, forgetting the first few words. Make us lie down in peace and raise us up again to life.
Mhm.
I think that's something that speaks a lot to me, because when you go to sleep, when you go to sleep, there's always the concern, will I be alive the next morning? Don't ask me why it's there and why it's a fear. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way. Probably not. And so where was it? One of the other ones that we read, that we should lie down in peace, but when we get up during the night, I don't remember where it was. Something about it, unless we die during the night, then obviously not going to get up the next day. Where this one gives us the hopefulness that we will, we're asking not only that we should sleep well, but that we also then should rise up again to life the next day to do whatever we're doing. There's a certain peacefulness and reassurance in that line.
I agree with you. And I think the rabbis, right, by putting this together, I think they're acknowledging that same fear or unknown.
The unknown, yeah.
The unknown about what tomorrow will bring. if there will be a
Mm.
tomorrow for us in the way that we're used to. And I think that's built into this prayer. Stand us
Mhm.
up just as much as you're laying us down in peace. And then our very first learning together in this winter series was about Modani, right? When we wake up in the morning, the traditional verse is to say, thank you, I'm back.
Gratitude, gratitude. Mm.
Yeah. Should we spend some time looking at some of the contemporary reflections on this?
There's something about, I was just
Yeah.
thinking that getting older, it becomes less comforting to say this because you know that people suddenly, when they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s, die in the middle of the night. I mean, we've had a number of people, at least I have had a number of people lately in my life, who I didn't expect to die, and they did recently, and they were a little younger than I was. So that becomes meaningful in another way, more scary, I guess, also.
Are you saying that the meaning of these words feel even more real, more significant? Or I guess another way is tell us more about, if you don't mind sharing, how this affects you or speaks to you now, based on what you're sharing.
How what? My speech to them? What did you say? I didn't hear that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Just based on that reflection, is that,
Yeah,
sometimes people don't wake up in the morning. I'm curious to hear you kind of reflect on that more. How does this Hashki Venu, part of this prayer, what does it mean to you knowing that sometimes people don't wake up in the morning?
scary part. That's the scary part. It's not just people I love and grew up with and have known and are younger who you want to be there for you, but it could happen to you too. And if there are days when you get older, like we are, some of us, and you don't feel so hot anymore, things don't go so well anymore, you think, God, maybe I'll go tonight. That is the scary part. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I think there can be a lot of fear in this moment before bed. And I don't know if the prayer soothes and comforts all of that fear or that uncertainty, but I think it's trying to, at the very least.
The fear is very real. And I think that's part of the thing, when you put your head down and you want to go to sleep. So that's what you have to deal with. But at least here to say, all right, let's at least be peaceful when we do lie down. And of course, we all hope that we will rise up the next day. Is there a guarantee? No. But if somehow it makes us feel a little more comfortable, maybe, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
This is Ed, about it comforting us. I do like the phrase, the tabernacle, the shelter, the spread over us, the shelter of your peace. But it is discomforting because there's so much action that we're directing ourselves to in the future. And there are so many active verbs in the paragraph that, it almost reflexively work against my ability to relax.
That's interesting. There's so many words and so many things that are happening. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like deliver us, shield us, remove, and that's so much activity. And you maybe
Yeah, and there's activity. We're sort of anticipating our own, active following of the commandments, and at the same time, there are all these active words we place on Adonai, do this for us, do that for us. And I don't know, I feel kind of stirred up and activated just reciting it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point of reflection too, is right, this is sort of the liturgy that we've inherited, and maybe just the first, 6, 7 words of this is enough to get the message across for us, right? Help us lay down for peace, and help us rise for peace, and shelter us in the shelter of your peace. Maybe something like that gets to the heart of what this is about. And we'll see that a lot of the poetic contemporary voices, and then the musical, let's say, recreations of this or commentaries on this, often are just interested in meditating on one of these lines, because there is a lot here. So let's, just because of time, why don't we look at least one of these. Let me just think about which one we should jump to. Why don't we do this first one? If we have time, we'll do a second, and then I'll play that last kind of musical commentary. This is Hashkivenu for hope.
Help us to lie down at night in comfort, safety, and peace. May the dream of our children be sweet tonight and tomorrow and the day after. May the future be bright for them and for their children and for generations to come. Grant us the ability to rest after long days of work and worry. Give us the chance to let our souls be at peace, and give us the grace to know how to separate from the things we cannot control. Allow us to quiet our bodies and our minds as we drift away from the mundane and enter into a sacred dreamscape. Spread over us the shelter of your comforting presence. Help us to know that it is okay to let go, to breathe, to be, just to be. Journey with us into our sublime subconsciousness, and let us live in this limited space of neither here nor there. For when we are with you, we are never truly alone. Guide us, watch over us, protect us. Allow us to rise in the morning with the fragrance of a new dawn and a chance to hope, to create ourselves anew again and again and again.
Thank you. How do folks like that? It's a more modern rendition.
I like it. Would you send these others that we didn't have a chance to get to today also?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I think the last packet had just the contemporary reflections in it, but I can send this all together as a single file.
Yeah.
It makes it a little more modern, right?
Oh yeah.
Grant us the ability to rest after long days of work and worry. Give us the grace to know how to separate from things that we cannot control. There's the language of, right, subconscious and dreamscape. Probably not language the rabbis would use, but it's, it speaks to us as well. I thought this was interesting. Let us live in this liminal space. Liminal is a word some of you may be familiar with. It's a classical religious studies word that means just kind of how this is describing. It's somewhere in between. A doorway, where the Shema would be, is a liminal space, somewhere that's neither in this room or that room. And so it's kind of saying that bedtime, when you're sleeping, that's neither awake nor totally not in this world, somewhere in between.
That's
Any other thoughts or reflections on this one?
Yes, it's Evie here.
Yes.
At the beginning, when you were asking if we have a ritual, having tried taking a meditation course, I found I was only able to give 5 minutes of time, but right before I go to sleep, and doing certain kinds of breathing. And so I make it a point not to use electronics, not to watch TV, not to look at my phone for a certain amount of time before I go to sleep. And I might lie in bed and read or do a crossword puzzle or something like that. And I sort of thought, and saying the Shema or some variation of it really lately is not appealing. And so it clicked with me as we're talking that I'm doing things to relax, but not to focus. And yet this last, more modern rendition by Sarah Stock Mayo did say, this does appeal to me as something I could recite to myself.
And why? What is it about it that allows, that's more enticing or appealing about it? And if you don't know, that's okay. It's also just good to know that it does speak to you.
No, but I do want to mention that because this one and the Shema speak of children, that it's also speaking if you don't have children, or if you have children who might not want to go in the same direction as you.
Yeah. This has nothing to do with what they believe or with how they live. It's just, I want them to have a sweet tonight and tomorrow and the day after.
And the line says, and give us the grace to know how to separate from the things we cannot control. Boy, that's a biggie.
So, but so often I wonder, for those of us who do not have our own children, if the line generations to come is still as poignant.
Yeah, it's a great question. I could see it either being less poignant, as maybe you're implying, and also as you're implying that it could be just the children of the future.
I think it can be a very general. It can be either for your own children or for anyone that you may or may not touch, or a wish. You wish that for all children.
Will we get to hear the Hashki Venu that was referred to?
Yes, we still have a little bit more than 5 minutes.
Okay, good.
So should we read one more and then listen? Is that okay? This is a slightly different style. Well, actually, this one's shorter. Maybe we'll do this one. Bedtime Hashki Venu. I can read this one. Now I lay me down to sleep in peace, eternal one. In the morning I will rise to life renewed in sun. Spread over me the shelter of your peace and set me right. Shield me, guard me, clear my way throughout this lonely night. Shelter me beneath your wings as you fly close above. Safeguard me as I come and go in life, and peace and love.
I like that one.
I
think
like this softness of this one.
Hmm.
Just the imagery of the wings, flying close above and renewing the sun, and it just has a real earthy feel to me.
Yeah.
Plus, I just happened to see a opera yesterday, and there was a very strong image in there of a swan. And it made me think of that, like maybe the image in this swan was sort of this protective being, which I hadn't thought of until this moment.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, but I agree with you. This is also very here and now in this physical world, right? The feeling of the sun. I like the phrase lonely night throughout this lonely night, right? Which I think is like hearkening back to the feeling of, right, this unknown and vulnerable time. So let's listen. That's okay for a rendition of Hashki Venu. I did a little poking around online. There's many versions of it. I'm happy to share the one that I found, but of the ones I listened to, this one spoke to me, or it resonated with my ear. So I thought we could at least listen to this. Hashki Venu. And this is by Lily Rice. I don't know who she is, but this is who we're going to listen to. So lay us down and let us rise up in peace. That's it. Thank you all for learning.
I know this Husky Veno quite well, except I could not understand the interpretive English words. Do you know what they were? I mean, I know the Husky Veno part and the melody, but I couldn't hear what she was saying in English.
Yeah. Did anybody catch what she was saying in English?
I thought it was all in Hebrew.
Oh,
Me too.
some English there, but
I think there was one word in Hebrew that she was pronouncing differently than maybe how we are accustomed to. She was saying Haminenu instead of Hamidenu. And that, I don't know if that caught your ear. I thought she was also singing in Hebrew, but I can send the link out too if anybody wants to listen to
I
it.
thought it was all Hebrew.
It was lovely. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Ross. We always learn so much and gives us so much to think about in a very different way. I really appreciate the time that we spent together.
Well,
Thanks, Ross. We'll probably, some of us develop new rituals at night.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
It's
Thank you all for
lovely.
learning.
We'll look forward to receiving all that
Thank
lovely
you.
information.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
For sure. Yeah, I'm happy to send it. And if anybody wants to stick around for a couple minutes, I'm happy to chat, or if anybody has any follow-up ideas they want to share. But otherwise, thank you. Thank you all for learning, and hopefully we'll learn again soon.